Hey, I'm Matt, and today I'm here to give you a quick primer on seed phrases, or mnemonics, as I struggled to say for a long time and probably still do. You might also know them as recovery codes. And these are things that you get, for example, from 1Password if you sign up. They'll give you your recovery codes, and they're a set of phrases that you can use to recover your account. Similarly, this is the case with your cryptographic wallets. In this case, you can use it to recover your wallet when needed or verify that it's yours. They're very important. However, how do they work? Behind the scenes, there's a couple of steps going on, and it's useful to know. So I thought I'd build you a small app and break down each of the specific steps. I am not an expert in this and the maths behind it. However, what I can do is break them down and give you a jumping off point for you to learn from. And you can always do further research into what you find interesting. Now, most of this stuff is based on wallets. At least that's the way I look at it, cryptographic wallets, and therefore they are based on a very important standard called the BIP39 standard, which comes from Bitcoin. If we look at it here, you can find straight away the mnemonic code, and you can have a look at exactly what that means. You can see a lot of things here. Now here we have certain word counts. The phrases that you receive, they're normally in a certain set. This set comprises of specific numbers of words, and they're done that way for a reason. It's to do with the entropy, and that they match with certain bit counts. So you can take for granted that if you're using this standard, BIP39, you will be able to choose, for example, between 12, 15, 18, 21, and 24 words. The more words, the more secure it is. Harder to guess. However, it's worth noting that there is a huge variance between 12 and 24, but even with 12, by the way, if we start at the end and we say we already have our seed phrase, I can barely describe this in plain English, the number of combinations. So after doing some research and asking our GPT friends, I've come to the understanding that 12 words results in so many combinations that it's like choosing a single atom from a sphere of Earth's size filled with tiny particles. It's a general way of putting it, of course, but it's good to give ourselves an image that is humongous. So that is very safe on the outset. 24, for example, you can see the difference, is akin to the number of fundamental particles in the observable universe, which is obviously estimated, not exactly known. No one's gone out and counted them. But isn't that crazy? In between, you can see 21, for example. If every star in the universe had its own universe inside it, with just as many stars, then the total number of stars still doesn't come close to this number. So you'll see facts in every part of this and every different word count. They're all generally relative to each other, but overall, humongous number of combinations. Absolutely crazy. So rest assured, this is one of the reasons it's very secure. Now, why? Why is it very secure? Why is it so random? Since, actually, if you look at BIP39, there are only a specific number of words which can be chosen. It's 2049, if I remember. Still, if you pick 12 from that list, it's incredibly secure. So why? It's partly to do with the randomness in the way that those words are chosen. Here we have entropy. And as you can see here, it's a random large number generated by something called, you ready for it? Cryptographically secure random number generator. That is a CSRNG. Now they vary across different platforms, different machines, and so on. But the idea is that it will take the most random sources of, should we say, noise, in this case, generally noise that it can, and it can use those to generate the random number, a large random number normally. Now, for example, we have one running in the hardware of our laptops. It's what the crypto library in JavaScript uses. And this draws its noise from a number of sources, its randomness. Anything that your laptop generally does can create randomness. Anything that the CPU is doing, any interactions from a user, everything that's going on can create randomness. And when combined together in a specific formulation, it can create incredible randomness. So all of that combined together can result in one of these guys, and that can generate for you what is almost guaranteed to be a random number, in the sense that you couldn't reverse engineer it and therefore generate the same one yourself. And that's why it's very secure. I want you to see here that if we choose a word count of 12, let's stick with that for now. We said earlier that it relates to bit count. I want you to know that each word in our recovery codes, or mnemonic phrase, represents 11 bits of entropy. It's 11 bits. We will come to the checksum in a moment. That's an extra little trick there at the end. Now you can read about it here. The checksum is determined by dividing the total length by 32 and rounding to the nearest whole number. So what I just want you to know is, for a word count of 12, if you have 11 bits of entropy, then you have 132-bit. However, you need to subtract 4 bits for the checksum if you do this calculation and reserve them. So that's why the total is less than the total with the checksum. And that's important. We'll get to that in a little bit. So what we do is we say, hey, we want 12 words. We want it to be very secure. The large random number is generated with a length of 128 bits to represent the right number of words and the checksum. The checksum helps us determine the validity, by the way, of all of this. Next, we can represent that. We can represent the number, that is, or the bits, as a hex, which is obviously just an easy way of generally reading binary. So as you can see down here, we have a number of nibbles, the 4 binary bits grouped together, and each nibble can represent values from 1 to 15, because we have 16 different digits in hexadecimal. And so obviously starting from 0 there. In this case, we've already used the crypto library to generate our entropy and represented it here for you as a hex. So this is the start of what you're going to see. The very beginnings. Now here I'm representing it to you as bits. This is exactly the bits of the entropy that we're going to use. Isn't it cool? You can see it. And finally, this is the random number. Here's your number. So this is the beginning, shown in 3 different ways, of your seed phrases. And we've been able to determine this before generating the seed phrases themselves, because remember, the seed phrases come from the entropy. The entropy is the large random number. It has a specific length of bits determined by the word lengths, i.e. how many words we want. And therefore we can generate this entropy. In our case, like I say, we use the crypto library. Now there is an extra step here before we continue generating. We mostly use hash of this entropy hex. Now, I think you can do it other ways, with not perhaps including the hex, doing it directly from something else. We're doing it from our hex here, which is the obviously hexadecimal interpretation of this decimal, or more importantly, these bits. So we make a hash of it. Why is that important? The same input, the hash produces the same output every time. So the entropy will always produce the same checksum. Now hashing is obviously a standard way to do this, used across many different places, many different industries. It provides determinism. That's what we just described. And it's crucial, because if you have the same entropy, you always need to get the same recovery keys. And so this is a good step. If we're using the hash, it's just concretely guaranteed, same input, same output. So a good process to follow. It ensures consistency. Lastly, we come back to the checksum. Like we said before, a few bits at the end, in our case 4, if we're using 128 bits, is used for the checksum. And in this case, for every 32 bits of entropy, 1 bit of the hash is used as the checksum. So here we have it. This is our checksum at the end. Now, if you're unfamiliar with checksums as I was, do a bit of research. It's really interesting. I won't go into it in depth here. You ready? We're going to get a seed phrase. Boom. Ours is rebel, concert, area, sing, tenant, dove, dose, reason, choose, fire, lake, cruel. Why did I just read all those out to you? It's because these names or words have been randomly chosen, as we've very concretely just described, from a list of words. And those words, the full list, they were chosen for a reason. And it's worth reading into BIP 39 to see a bit more about that. Generally, one of the reasons is because they're not easy to confuse with another one. Generally speaking. Obviously, dove and dose, a little bit here you could argue, but generally they're chosen for a number of reasons, one of which is to be very distinct from each other. But there you have it. You now have your phrases. And here are the total bits, including your checksum, calculated by just taking the bits of each word, adding it all together. That's it here. So you have your recovery phrases, you generated them. What now? What happens if you need to validate that this is correct? What happens if you need to use them? You need to validate using the checksum. Is the checksum valid? So here's what we'll do. We'll take this binary representation as we see above. We will extract the entropy from it, knowing how many words we have. We can take the last bits. Here we extract our checksum again. Then we take our entropy, bring it back to the hex. We take our hash of that entropy. We can recalculate the checksum from that hash. And by comparing the two, prove that this is valid. The checksum indeed is valid. This has not been tampered with. And there you go. I'll post a link to this live app down below the video, but I hope it teaches you a little bit about how a seed phrase comes from entropy, comes from randomness, how it involves a checksum, and how that checksum can then be validated. Thank you.